Nothing is going well in Russia, which invaded Ukraine. There have been one explosion after another in Russia in the last week. The country has turned into hell. Putin is having the hardest days of his life. So what exactly is happening in Russia? The chaos in Russia is not new. Putin has been suppressing all tensions in Russia for years. But at the moment of this crisis, all tensions resurfaced. Russia is going through one of the worst periods in its history. Vladimir Putin, Russia's leader, has ruled the country since 1999. During this time, he has faced many problems. In recent years, Putin has stepped up the crackdown on his opponents and has made all democratic institutions in the country unworkable. Corruption allegations in Russia are not being investigated, and Russian citizens are on the verge of revolt. The Russian Federation is also in danger of disintegrating. The other danger that awaits Russia is a massive bankruptcy due to the economic crisis in the country. These great dangers triggered the current crisis in Russia. But what does the fact that a bomb explodes every day in Russia have to do with these crises? Unable to deal with the major crisis in Russia, Putin started a war to regain his power and keep his country together. He thought that this war would make everyone support him more. He increased his security rhetoric and decided to invade Ukraine. Before invading Ukraine, Russia was confident of a great success in this war. The Russian army, one of the largest in the world, planned to capture Kiev. Thanks to this victory, Russian leader Putin imagined that he would be recognized as a hero by his people. But nothing went Putin's way. Ukraine's leader Zelensky showed great courage and decided to resist Russia. Ukraine did not surrender and showed a historic resistance. Ukrainian leader Zelensky also encouraged his people and army with his courageous speeches. Zelensky is a former comedian. He knows how to charm the masses and raise their hopes. In 2018, Zelensky entered politics by taking off his stage clothes and putting on a dress in order to develop Ukraine. The fact that Ukraine is a Western and developed country scared Putin, because the Russian people were closely following the developments in Ukraine and everyone started to admire Zelensky. The number of people who wanted democracy in Russia was increasing day by day. By invading Ukraine, Putin wanted to show that he would not allow a Western state on his border. This time, however, Zelensky took off his suit and appeared in front of the cameras in military fatigues. Zelensky, who won the love of the Ukrainian people as a comedian, turned into a national hero in the eyes of the people by choosing to resist Russia. Zelensky has already gone down in Ukrainian history. The Ukrainian leader Zelensky's decision to resist has thwarted all Kremlin plans. The Kremlin administration thought that Ukraine would be easily captured. However, thanks to Zelensky's decisive stance, the Ukrainian army showed a legendary resistance and stopped the Russian army near the Dnipro River. Shortly after the Ukrainian army stopped the Russian troops, it began counter-operations. During these operations, the Russian army suffered so many casualties that it will go down in world history. The Russian army lost about 100,000 soldiers in this war. The Russian army also lost a lot of tanks, airplanes, and stocks. The Russian army was forced to retreat from most of the territories it occupied. The Russian army, which was thought to be the strongest army in the world, turned out to be a very weak army. Russia's reputation is completely ruined. A military base in the Russian-occupied city of Mariupol was shelled by the Ukrainian army today. The base is said to have been badly damaged as a result of this attack. Russia may have to withdraw from this region very soon. There have also been successive explosions in Crimea today. Crimea, occupied by Russia in 2014, is waiting for the day when it will be liberated. The Ukrainian army is doing its best to liberate Crimea. Russia has already started digging trenches in Crimea. This war started in Crimea, it will end in Crimea, said Ukrainian leader Zelensky. After Zelensky's statement, everyone understood how eager the Ukrainian army is to liberate Crimea. But the biggest explosion today was in Moscow. A fire broke out around 6 local time at Mega Himki, the largest shopping center in Russia, located in the Russian capital Moscow. After the fire, explosions started one after another. The shopping center continued to burn for hours. However, the cause of the fire is not yet known. There are two different claims in the Russian press. The first claim is that this attack is the result of a power struggle between oligarchs in Russia. It is claimed that there is a power struggle between the companies that own this burning shopping mall in Russia. Competition is increasing among all capital groups in Russia. These groups aim to increase their political power, because it is thought that Putin's rule will end in a short time. Therefore, all oligarchs are struggling to gain more power after Putin. The second claim about this explosion is that the fire was set by Ukrainian intelligence. However, there is no concrete evidence for this claim. The Russian government does not want it to be said that this fire was set by Ukrainian intelligence, because this reveals the intelligence weakness in Russia. In the last few days, there have been explosions at a fuel tanker and a military airport in Russia. The Russian government has not yet explained why. However, many media outlets reported that these explosions could have been caused by Ukrainian drones. Every day there is a new explosion in Russia. As a result of these explosions, Russian citizens are experiencing great fear. Russia has turned into hell. Russian citizens blame Putin's government for these attacks. Putin's government has failed to prevent any of these attacks. Russian citizens are outraged by this failure of the government. This war did not solve any of Russia's problems. On the contrary, it has caused so many new problems. Citizens living in Russia are now trying to protect their lives. Moreover, inflation in Russia has reached historic levels. The Russian ruble continues to depreciate every day. The Russian stock market is experiencing a huge decline. As a result of all this, many companies are going bankrupt. Unemployment in Russia is increasing every day. The Russian people live in poverty and war. By inflicting such misery on his own people, Russian leader Vladimir Putin is making the whole world suffer. All peaceful states are worried about Putin's aggressive policies. An oppressive leader who started a war to consolidate his power turned the lives of millions of people into a nightmare. This is a very important example for world history. No society that wants to live in peace should allow oppressive leaders who put their own political career above all else to rule. In Russia, millions of people fear for their lives because of Putin's mistakes. But the Ukrainian government says it will never harm any civilian. The fact that there were no civilian casualties in these explosions in recent days, and that the explosion in the shopping mall took place during closed hours makes everyone think. It is thought that these explosions may have been organized by the Ukrainian army. This raises the same question on everyone's mind. Will the explosions continue in Russia? We have no concrete data on this at the moment. The Ukrainian army does not claim responsibility for these explosions in Russia. That's why there are no official statements about the fires. But the fact remains that if this war continues, there could be dozens more explosions in Moscow. What do you think about these successive explosions? Do you think the explosions in Russia will continue? What are your predictions about the future of Crimea? What do you think Putin will do when this war is over? Share your views with us.